History is full of warriors and tyrants, men who conquered with iron fists and ruled through fear. But just as powerful, and often more lasting, are the stories of those who changed the world, not through force, but through an inner fire that quietly burned behind gentle eyes. These were people known for their kindness, patience, and humility. They were the ones who listened more than they spoke, who served more than they demanded. Society often overlooked them, misjudging their compassion as submission, their softness as weakness. But there is a dangerous miscalculation in underestimating the quiet. Because when kind people snap, they don't do so out of ego or desire for dominance. They do so because something deeply sacred has been violated. Often it is not even for themselves, but for others, for justice, for truth, for dignity. Their breaking point is rarely loud in the beginning. It might look like a refusal to comply, a whisper of truth against roaring lies, or a tear-filled decision to finally stand up and walk away. But when these acts occur, they send shockwaves through history. The world watched as a quiet seamstress refused to give up her seat. The world changed when a young woman distributed pamphlets against one of the most terrifying regimes in history, and entire nations trembled when individuals, long dismissed or ignored, rose up and turned the tide of events through moral courage, not brute force. This is not the story of rage. It is the story of resilience. It is about the moment when enduring, souls who carried pain silently for years finally said, "No more." These stories prove that it is often the gentle who are the most dangerous when roused, and in their defiance, they don't just resist, they inspire. They don't just break, they rebuild. This is a history of kindness under fire, and it begins where all revolutions of the soul do, with a heart that has been hurt too many times, and a spirit that refuses to be broken any longer. Gavrilo Princip was not a man born for violence. A frail, quiet young student from a poor Serbian family in Bosnia, he grew up with a sense of longing for education, for justice, for national pride. He was introspective, intellectual, and passionate about poetry and history. But he lived under the oppressive rule of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, where Slavic identity was constantly suppressed, and opportunities for young men like him were scarce. Princip believed in change, but like many of his generation, he felt invisible, an outsider in his own homeland. What led this soft-spoken youth to become the man who fired the shot that changed the world? It wasn't personal hate or bloodlust. It was years of watching his people suffer. His sense of justice twisted slowly into desperation. When he joined the underground group Black Hand, it was out of a belief that someone had to do something to shake the empire. Then came June 28, 1914. When Archduke Franz Ferdinand visited Sarajevo, Princip saw not a man, but a symbol of the empire he blamed for his people's suffering. And so, in a moment that shocked even his fellow conspirators, the shy student pulled the trigger. 2 bullets later, the Archduke and his wife were dead, and the world plunged into the chaos of World War I. One quiet young man, pushed too far, ignited a storm no one could contain. Rosa Parks was not a loud protester or a public firebrand. She was a modest seamstress in Montgomery, Alabama, deeply rooted in her community and grounded in her faith. She was soft-spoken, respectful, and always careful not to make trouble. But her kindness existed within a system designed to crush the dignity of Black Americans. Every day, she witnessed the casual cruelty of segregation, being denied basic rights, humiliated in public, treated as less than human. And for years, she endured it in silence, clinging to her pride and composure in a society that demanded submission. But on December 1st, 1955, after another long day of work, something in Rosa snapped. When the bus driver told her to give up her seat for a white passenger, she didn't yell, she didn't argue, she simply said no. It was a quiet, powerful act that echoed across the nation. Parks later said she was just tired of giving in. That single moment of defiance from a woman known for her gentleness sparked the Montgomery bus boycott and fueled the modern civil rights movement. Her calm resistance revealed a deeper strength, that kindness and dignity, when backed into a corner, can shake the foundations of injustice. Rosa Parks didn't need to shout to be heard. Her silence thundered across America. Oskar Schindler began as anything but a hero. A charismatic businessman and member of the Nazi Party he was, known for his charm, wealth, and indulgence. At first, his move to Krakow during World War II was purely opportunistic. He wanted to profit from the war, exploiting Jewish labor in his enamelware factory. To those around him, he appeared to be just another war profiteer, focused on wealth and status. He wasn't a man known for moral convictions or humanitarian ideals. But beneath the surface, something more complex was stirring. As Schindler spent more time with his Jewish workers, witnessing firsthand the brutality and inhumanity of the Holocaust, his conscience began to awaken. The violence he initially overlooked became impossible to ignore. His transformation wasn't sudden. It was quiet and gradual, the kind of internal shift that brews under layers of denial. But when he snapped, it wasn't with anger. It was with compassion. He began bribing Nazi officials, falsifying records, and risking his own life to protect over 1,200 Jews from deportation and death. His factory became a sanctuary, and his ledger, the now famous Schindler's List, became a lifeline. This man, who once sought only profit, ended up spending every last coin to save lives. Schindler didn't raise a gun or lead a protest. He resisted with money, manipulation, and unshakable courage. His breaking point turned him from an ambitious opportunist into a reluctant guardian angel. Sophie Scholl was the embodiment of gentleness and intellect. A university student in Munich, she was known for her love of poetry, philosophy, and nature. She believed in beauty, freedom, and truth. Raised in a family that taught moral responsibility over blind obedience, Sophie was deeply disturbed by the Nazi regime's growing grip on Germany. But like many young people at the time, she tried to live a normal life, studying, dreaming, hoping. Still, the propaganda, the fear, and the silence gnawed at her. Her breaking point came when she realized that doing nothing made her complicit. With her brother Hans, Sophie joined the White Rose Resistance, a small student-led movement that spread anti-Nazi leaflets across campuses. Their message was clear: awaken the conscience of the German people. Sophie's role wasn't dramatic. She didn't fight with weapons. She wrote, printed, and distributed words of truth. But in Nazi Germany, words were dangerous. One day, while dropping leaflets at the university, Sophie was spotted and arrested. During her trial, she remained composed, refusing to betray her beliefs. I am, now as before, of the opinion that I did the best that I could do for my people, she said, before being executed at just 21 years old. Sophie Scholl's snapping was not loud, but it was defiant, poetic, and eternal. In the face of a monstrous regime, the quiet strength of one brave student still echoes across history. Leo Tolstoy, one of history's most revered writers, was a man of immense depth, empathy, and contradiction. Known globally for his literary masterpieces like War and Peace and Anna Karenina, Tolstoy was not just a novelist, but a gentle philosopher who deeply wrestled with moral and spiritual questions. Born into nobility, he lived a life of privilege, yet as he aged, his inner world began to fracture. Haunted by the vast inequality he saw in Russian society, disturbed by the hypocrisy of organized religion, and plagued by questions of meaning and mortality, Tolstoy reached a point of profound personal crisis. He called it a moral awakening, but in truth, it was a slow-burning rebellion. This wasn't the snapping of a violent revolutionary, but of a man whose soul refused to remain silent. Tolstoy renounced his aristocratic title, gave away his wealth, abandoned his copyrights, and chose to live simply among peasants. He became an outspoken critic of government, church, and war, promoting radical pacifism and Christian anarchism. His writings inspired global leaders like Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr., not through fury, but through moral clarity. His snapping wasn't outwardly explosive, it was spiritual, philosophical, and utterly transformative. In choosing to live according to his conscience, Tolstoy redefined the power of the pen, proving that a peaceful mind can start a silent revolution. Nat Turner was a deeply religious, introspective man, an enslaved preacher in Virginia whose quiet nature and spiritual wisdom made him both respected and overlooked. He was known among other enslaved people for his intelligence and deep devotion to the Bible. For most of his life, Turner endured the chains of slavery with pained dignity, believing that God had a purpose for him. But that purpose, Turner believed, was not simply to survive. It was to lead his people out of bondage. As he watched families torn apart, women abused, and children born into suffering, something within him began to boil. Unlike others who resisted silently, Turner's breaking point came in the form of a vision. He believed God was calling him to take action. In 1831, he led a rebellion that shocked the American South. It was swift, brutal, and bloody. Over 50 white slaveholders were killed as Turner and his followers sought to dismantle the system that had kept them in chains. While the rebellion was eventually crushed and Turner was captured and executed, the uprising sent tremors through the nation. It forced Americans to confront the rage that centuries of cruelty had birthed. Turner, once seen as a quiet preacher, became a symbol of violent resistance, his actions sparking fear in the South and reigniting the debate over slavery. His story reveals how the most devoted and patient souls, when pushed beyond human endurance, can erupt in ways that make history tremble. Desmond Doss was a man of deep faith, unwavering principle, and quiet strength. A devout Seventh-day Adventist and pacifist, he believed in the sanctity of life and refused to carry a weapon, even during one of the bloodiest wars in human history. When he enlisted in the U.S. Army during World War II, he faced ridicule and hostility from fellow soldiers who saw his refusal to bear arms as cowardice. They mocked him, beat him, and petitioned to have him discharged. But Doss never wavered. He wasn't there to kill. He was there to save. Then came the Battle of Okinawa, a brutal and unforgiving siege where soldiers fell by the hundreds. As chaos erupted and bullets rained, Doss ran into the fire. Without a weapon, without armor, and with only his medic bag, he crawled through mud and blood, dragging wounded soldiers to safety, one after another. Over the course of a single night, he rescued 75 men from the battlefield, each time praying, "Lord, please help me get one more." His bravery stunned the very men who had once doubted him. Desmond Doss snapped, not in anger, but in courage. When his gentle spirit met the horrors of war, it didn't collapse, it rose. He became the first conscientious objector in U.S. history to receive the Medal of Honor. His story is a testament that true strength doesn't come from violence, but from the refusal to abandon one's humanity, even in hell. Throughout history, we are taught to admire the bold, the aggressive, the loud. But time and again, it is the quiet ones, the kind, the patient, the enduring, who reshape the world when they finally act. These individuals weren't born to rebel. They weren't motivated by ambition or vengeance. They were simply pushed too far. They endured until they could endure no more. And when they snapped, their actions revealed a truth more powerful than any weapon, that moral courage can be just as explosive as rage. These stories, from Gavrilo Princip's gunshot that sparked a world war, to Rosa Parks's silent refusal that ignited a movement, remind us that breaking points are not always violent, but they are always revealing. They expose the hidden strength in gentle souls and the resilience that simmers beneath compassion. History is full of such moments, when one quiet decision echoes louder than a battlefield. So the next time we overlook the soft-spoken or underestimate the kind-hearted, we must remember, still waters run deep, and when they rise, they can sweep away empires.